it was very hard to get the money we needed to make it. So we had to turn around to our cast, and we were able to do that because we weren't taking money out of the show ourselves either. And that made a big difference, I think, to them, to say, look, the only way this story is going to be told is if we all do it for very, very low rates. And they did.
Let's also speak to Patrick Spence, the executive producer of Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, the ITV drama that has gripped the nation and galvanised a public response to this story. Patrick, good morning to you.
Good morning.
In retrospect, you hear a story like that and it feels very dramatic, very emotive, the sort of story that needs to be told. Did you know from the beginning this was something that had to be told in this way?
Yes, it was pretty obvious to us. It was brought to us by a brilliant factual producer, Natasha Bondi, and she had already done a lot of work on it, talking to many of the sub-postmasters, to Alan, to James Arbuthnot, etc. And so she was able to tell us the story in some detail, and it felt pretty obvious to us that it needed to be told, particularly because I had never heard of it when she walked in my door. So I felt that shame that we're all feeling now.
Were you surprised at that? And what is the reason in your view? Because if you look at it, if you go through podcasts and you go through news broadcasters and you go through newspapers, the story was there. It has been written. It's been reported about. Private Eye did lots of great work about it. It just never got a snowball effect. Can you work out now it has why that was, do you think?
As soon as I started looking into the story, I realized how much had been written. Nick Wallace's podcast came out shortly after. And that, I think, was the first time when people properly started to pay attention. We as a team have been inspired not just by Nick, but also by Marina Hyde, who brought such passion to it. But why didn't it take off? I think all I can answer is why I think the drama worked is it allowed us to do one very simple thing really easily, which was to tell the story of the sub-postmasters and to allow the audience into their homes and their hearts and to see how much they suffered. And an article can't do that. A documentary can't do that because they weren't there in the moment. And so that's where a factual drama becomes a gift.
Did anyone ever say to you, by the way, this is a legal thing, it's quite complicated, this won't work as a drama? Were there any naysayers at any point saying this isn't going to work?
No. The ITV's I heard you refer earlier to the idea, I hope now they'll make more of these. ITV are already, if you look out for them, making lots of them. They make 2 or 3 of them a year and they're all brilliant. But most of them are stories that aren't quite so urgent. They don't end with a call to action as ours did, because many of those stories are over. But ITV have been doing them for some time, and therefore they have a compliance team that are top rate. So our hands were held very, very well throughout the process.
Did the cast really take less money to do it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very, very hard to fund 4-part, I won't bore you with the detail, but it's very hard to fund these kinds of dramas because they don't sell well internationally. So it's very hard with production budgets shooting up to raise enough money to make a show. This was such a peculiarly British story that it was very hard to get the money we needed to make it. So we had to turn around to our cast, and we were able to do that because we weren't taking money out of the show ourselves either. And that made a big difference, I think, to them, to say, look, the only way this story is going to be told is if we all do it for very, very low rates. And they did. Every single one of them that we asked said, where do I sign? No one negotiated. We offered the same thing to everyone, and they all did it. And when I went to each of them on set or at the read-through as I met them to say thank you, they all said, no, thank you. This is an honor. So it was very moving.
It's been such a triumph in all this. One very small point I want to ask you. Some people have noticed that Adam Crozier was boss of Royal Mail. He had links to ITV. He wasn't featured very much in the programme. Did anyone at ITV ever say to you, was there ever any implied or anything that says, well, hang on, back off this guy because he's connected to the channel?
No, and absolutely no one did. And that was my decision that he didn't feature in the programme, in as much as we agreed with Gwyn that our story was Alan Bates. By the time Alan Bates fully engaged with the Post Office, Adam was long gone. Believe me, I would have had no qualms at all going after Adam if we had evidence that he had been involved in the story as Alan was leading it. So we haven't featured any of the other executives at the Post Office who came after Paula either, because our story is, what did Alan Bates do and his gang, and how did the Post Office respond to that? That was where the meat of the narrative lay. If Adam Crozier has questions to answer, then I hope the inquiry will make him answer them.
Just finally, people talk about things like the contaminated blood scandal, which is a huge scandal. We do report it, it's regularly reported, but maybe there isn't that much impetus behind it. Do you personally want to take on another crusade somewhere along the line?
I'm doing 2 more dramas. I can't talk about them because they haven't been announced. Although one of them I can actually say is going to be about Harry Evans and his time at the Sunday Times.
Oh, interesting.
But we love true stories, and like I say, I have worked with ITV for a while, and will continue to do lots more of them. There's a huge appetite amongst commissioners for these stories, and clearly with an audience too.
Clearly with an audience. Well, Patrick, great work. I mean, I'm so pleased you've done this. I'm so pleased we're talking about it now, and what a result it's been for you and the cast and the writers and everyone connected with it. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.